And now, marine weather around Alaska. Hi, I'm meteorologist Peter Chan with your marine weather segment. We start with the sea ice on this Saturday, July 8th. Of note, see how the open water is really increasing here now across the Chukchi Sea, including in through Norton Sound. The ice will continue to melt off and gradually retreat northward as we continue to move through the summer season. There are not any notable storm systems, though. Overall, low pressure just kind of resides, trough of low pressure along the west side of the mainland into the Bering Sea. It's where the primary storm track will continue to be here for the next week ahead. For the inner channels of the Panhandle, winds will be out of the west-northwest, 10 to 20 knots, highest there up around Lynn Canal. Waves running a couple of feet, maybe perhaps as high as 3 feet down toward Dixon Entrance. For the outer coast, within 15 nautical miles of shore, the nearshore waters, winds 20 to 25 knots from the northwest, south of Gustavus. Waves 5 to 7 feet. More westerly winds once you get outside there of Yakutat Bay toward Cape Suckling with waves 4 feet. And on Monday, winds will be northwesterly, middle channels from Stevens Passage down to Dixon Entrance, 15 knots. Waves 2 to 3 feet. Lynn Canal, south winds 10 knots, waves a foot or two. And then for the outer coast, look for west winds outside of Yakutat Bay, 15 knots or so, becoming more northwesterly, 20 knots south of Gustavus to off of Craig with waves of 5 to maybe as high as 6, 7 feet. For the northwestern Gulf on Sunday, variable winds within Prince William Sound with waves running a couple of feet. Variable winds off the Kenai, 3-foot waves. For lower Cook Inlet and including the entrance there, south to southeast winds 20 to 25 knots, waves 4 to 6 feet. And on Monday, variable winds continue within Prince William Sound around 10 knots with waves running a foot or two. Look for easterly winds off the Kenai and at the entrance of Cook Inlet, 15 to 20 knots, waves right around 4 feet. Variable winds upper Cook Inlet, Turnagain Arm, only around 10 knots with waves running a foot or two. For Sunday, we do have a frontal system, a couple of weak low pressures moving into the southwest and west side of the state. Front lifting up through this region and weakening, but ahead of it, south-southeast winds 20 knots across Kodiak Island to as high as 30 knots, Bristol Bay to the north side, the Bering side here of the Alaska Peninsula. Waves 5 to 7 feet on the Bering side and 5, 6 feet on the North Pacific side. Winds will come down on Monday. Variable winds around 10 knots in the vicinity of Kodiak Island and pretty much southeast to variable winds 10 to 15 knots the rest of the Alaska Peninsula. Waves 3 to 4 feet pretty much either side of the peninsula. And for the Aleutians in the wake of that front, on Sunday, winds are southwest to south, as high as 25 knots in the eastern Aleutians, closer to 20 knots in the central Aleutians, and then kind of turning back toward the south-southeast, 15 to 20 knots west of Adak. For Monday, southwest winds right around 15 knots, the central and eastern Aleutians, with waves running 2 to maybe as high as 4 or 5 feet outside of Nikolsky to the north in the Bering Sea, and maybe 6 to 7 feet on the North Pacific side, but then the winds fall off variable 10 knots over the western Aleutians for Monday. And along the southwest coast, strongest winds are going to be southeast to south there within Bristol and Kuskokwim Bays with waves 6 to 7 feet. Behind the front, winds turn northwest to west, 15 to 20 knots from St. Matthew down to St. Paul. And look for southeasterly offshore flow within Norton Sound and the Yukon Delta, 20 to 25 knots with waves 3 to 5 feet. And for Monday, winds a little bit more of a mix down across the southeast portion of the Bering, variable 10 knots or onshore within Kuskokwim and Bristol Bays. But look for southwest winds 15 to 20 knots off the lower Yukon Delta into Norton Sound with waves of 3 to 4 feet. Along the Arctic coast, winds easterly as high as, westerly winds as high as 30 knots in the vicinity of Kaktovik, with where there is any open waterways, 3 to 6 feet. Winds as we go down along the northwest coast and in through the lower Chukchi Sea, northeast to east winds as high as 20 knots coming in out of Kotzebue Sound and south of Point Hope, with waves 4 feet or so in the lower portion of the Chukchi. And then north side of St. Lawrence Island, north winds around 10 knots with waves 3 to 4 feet. Strongest winds 25 knots there within Norton Sound. And then for Monday, Winds generally lighter out of the east at 10 knots, Kaktovik through Utqiagvik, Wainwright. Those winds southeasterly off of Cape Lisburne and Point Hope at 10 to 15 knots, but turning back toward the west through the Bering Strait there, around 10 knots with waves 2-3 feet at most. Quick check of the surface features. Sunday afternoon, we do have one area of low pressure near and just east of St. Lawrence Island, a broad area of cloud cover, lower cloud cover, areas of rain and showers throughout much of the west and southwest side of the state. Breezier conditions here across the Alaska Peninsula. And for Monday, that general troughiness of low pressure continues along the west side of the state with areas of rain and rain showers, while a weak ridge of high pressure remains in place, especially over the eastern part of the Gulf, which will tend to keep the panhandle on the drier side for this upcoming week, though temperatures will not be quite as warm. We'll see a little cooler, more seasonable summertime temperatures there as we go through the upcoming week.